Hello, Todd.
Okay.
Looks like we may have a light turnout today.
He's got the Christmas spirit going already.
Yes. Well, at least the AI dropped off now, so that's good. Yeah, I pinged Craig, see if he's around. Hello, John.
Again.
Telling Todd, it looks like we have kind of a light turnout today.
Ah,
So, what's on your guys' minds?
oh, I'm still trying to determine whether you guys want to do anything with manageability.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, I think the question is what and how can I
Yes,
help?
exactly. Yes. I heard from Craig. He's in the emergency room. He thinks he's broke his leg. So, yeah, there's been some chat about, I think we've been kind of kicking around this idea of what to do with the charter. We've seen a lot of people that have kind of come into the edge team here, um, looking for other ruggedized environments as well. Um, we've been kind of talking about um, adapting DCMHS and some other things to sort of the telco use case, but then potentially also seeing, if folks in this group want to kind of tackle things sort of just beyond the telco vertical and go into kind of these other hardened environments. So in terms of the comment about your manageability, you see a lot of that in the telco space. Um, but if this starts to get put into other environments, I think that's a completely open and interesting area. Um, to perhaps even maybe take a fresher view of that whole area. That would just be my thought. Um, we've had people kind of come in here wanting to have environments that they can literally toss something into a suitcase and set it up, stand it up in environments that don't even have, say, dedicated internet access, where they're actually like sharing internet access in some remote regions and countries where they have to share the internet access with the schools. And so during the school day, they have to turn over the internet access to the education side, and then they have to, they only get access to things in kind of a more um, global aspect, once that school days ended, where they can then sort of connect to the internet and share that bandwidth. Um, so that was kind of an interesting use case, and of course there was no there was no even no concept of manageability yet at that level. They were just kind of happy with kind of standing these things up, and getting internet access. And then we also had some discussions with Starling X, looking at kind of environments to run, and the manageability also came up. And mostly that's coming for the edge today through kind of Redfish, um, and a profile. But what that exactly is, I think is completely open in terms of you know what
But
would
when
you do?
I thought when they came in, when Starlink X came in, right, and they began talking about manageability, um, I thought we punted them off to telco.
Yeah, well, there's this kind of there's kind of a revolving idea of, does edge go under telco? Is edge is edge something else, right? And so kind of kicking around this idea, if edge becomes you know outside of telco, goes into these other hard environments, that what the idea with the Starling X was, is that this should perhaps be a larger OCP initiative, because it doesn't just target telco, right? And so that's why this kind of comes again, 360, in terms of, is this somewhere, is this something that we land in edge? Does edge become more than telco? Does this kind of start to pick up
Should
those parts of OCP?
should this stream have a discussion with the telco project?
Yeah, so we're right now we're hung underneath the telco project. And so there's been some kind of talk of even folding the telco project into edge, or vice versa. So that's kind of all on the table. We kind of had this discussion, I think, last year as well. And so I think, coming into the new year, the question is, do we want to take something more definitive, um, in terms of where we want to target this group, and what we think could be done, in terms of kind of the OCP initiatives, and kind of taking what we've done with the telco, and how that all kind of fits. Do you have any thoughts there?
Well, I think it's a matter of what you can get the community interested in, right?
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
it's kind of like not us inventing things that people might be interested in. It's and to me, whether it's telco the project or edge the sub project, um, you know, what it's kind of like we need to go talk to the telco industry and figure out what that we can do as far as that tip isn't doing, right?
Yeah.
Because I thought tip was kind of, you know, supporting most of the telco needs, and so there was this relationship agreement between tip and OCP, and I'm unsure, right, what was carved out that OCP could do that tip wasn't already doing.
Yeah. Yeah. From the telco side.
Yeah, and I think until you get that delineation clear, right? Then I, as a telco, say, well, I want to do stuff. Tip seems to be doing a lot of stuff here. I'll go there. And when I go to OCP, they don't seem to be doing much. So it's you need to be able within Tip to say, if you want to do this part of telco, you need to go to OCP.
Yeah.
Right. And if they're not willing to do that, then there's not really much of a relationship because there's no dividing line between TIPS charter and what they consider OCP charter.
Yep. No, I
Okay.
agree with you.
All
Yep.
right. So do you know anything about what TIP does? I don't know anything about TIP other than the acronym, right?
Yeah. So that's kind of peripheral to the area that I was working on. So I've kind of changed my focus now too. Um, and so that also kind of comes along with this discussion of um, do we look beyond even just telco, because that's kind of some of the areas that I'm working in, and that's kind of what I'm being exposed to. So from the
Uh-huh.
people that I'm coming across that would be kind of interested in looking at that. Oh, good, we got Lucas. Hey, Lucas. But yeah, so that's kind of where my influence is going now, is because I'm not so much involved with kind of just the pure telco. Now, that's Lucas was involved with some of the original work that yeah, it was being done specifically sort of with a telco focus, um, on the Nokia side, when kind of this was all kind of driving a lot more of the uh, open edge open edge server, and that's kind of really what the main focus of the group had been. um, but now it's kind of, things are kind of changing. That's why it could be interesting to do something different with the group if we wanted to, or like you said, it's all about getting people involved in what do they want to cover in this area, right?
Right.
So
So that's why I don't think you can diverge from telco because you are under the telco project. So you're under
yep.
the charter.
At least for now, yeah. So that was one thing that's kind of on the table, is if the community here feels that does that still resonate, are we still focused here, then that's great. If we think we were getting a lot more people outside of telco, and that's sort of why that kind of discussion came up. um is telco too limiting for kind of the community that was being attracted? It's not to say that we couldn't, we wouldn't continue the work that we were doing with Open Edge, and kind of the Open Edge kind of finds its it finds traction in other venues other than telco as well. um the question would be is, what who are we attracting to the community? What does the community want to drive? And are we situated in the right place to kind of collect and get the right kind of, going back to what you said, what's, is there glare between what TIP is doing and what OCP wants to do? Are there things that that are starting to become crossover points between telco and other uses of kind of hardened environment technology? And I think there's like a lot of industries that are starting to get more involved in this. Telco brings a, a lot of historical capabilities and viewpoints in the way things were done that could be applied now to these other types of verticals. Yeah, especially when we're kind of looking at wanting to do AI and some other things at the edge in kind of a telco environment that could also apply in other vertical domains as well. So
Well,
yeah,
that's
so
why
so
when
that's
when you mention AI, right, then so I look at the TIP website and they have one of their projects is telco AI.
yep.
So that's why it's kind of like, if we need to, if we're going to continue under telco, we need to find a nice dividing line, right? And if this is where telco hardware goes, then that's what we need to go focus on, because everything else is being sucked up by tip. But because they don't have it, and I looking at their portal, they have nothing as far as, you know contribution of open source hardware,
Right. Yeah.
which is what OCP's bread and
Which
butter
is what
is, right?
correct. Yep.
Right. So that's what we should go focus on. And I think hardening hardware for telco is where you want to go focus. And if the telco industry is I guess doesn't want to converge, right, then there's not a whole lot this group can do.
Yeah.
Open source only, you know, grows when a whole bunch of people say, okay, no, we should stop doing this all arbitrarily differently. We should, we should do common things commonly and put our value someplace else.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah, Lucas had done a lot of investigations into um, liquid cooling and things like that. Specifically around kind of the open edge server. But there was nothing specific in there that says that's telco, right? I mean it that concept could apply to any type of edge environment. Um, that needs kind of this constrained hardware or constrained environment for hardware. Um, so there could be venues where this could be also value. Um, but it could continue to grow under telco. It's just is telco, are they still driving this that way, or is there other industries that see value in kind of a open source hardware specification as well, and can we converge those requirements and approach.
Yeah, I think Lucas is having microphone problems.
Yeah, he may be having trouble joining us.
So did Telco make this group make any presentations at OCP Summit trying to elicit interest in future work?
I say I don't know. I was not at the summit. I know they had kind of a kind of a birds of a feather meeting. I was hoping we could join, but we weren't able to kind of pull that off. Um, and they have their meetings. They have the telco meetings like a week before us. So it was last week.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of areas that they're discussing overlap with the edge now, as well. And so the question is does it make sense to continue both a telco and an edge? Do you combine telco and edge? Does edge kind of become something more than telco?
Right. So I would set up a meeting with the telco leads and the telco SC rep.
Yeah. So yeah, we talked together, and so
Okay.
that's
Okay.
kind of you know what.
So whatever you guys decide is what happens, right? So you guys can
Well, no,
evaluate.
I mean, it's really a community, right? Like you said, it's really what does the community want to do, right? So it's kind of where do you all want to take the groups, and what it's not like we have any agenda. I'm really just kind of facilitating, you know, our community here, right? So it's not like I'm dictating what we do. It's really kind of what everybody wants the community to do, right? So that's really the idea is what do folks that join this team, join the telco team, where do they want to go? What do they want to do? What do they want the groups to drive? And so, that's kind of why I'm kind of bringing this up again now in December is, we could kind of set an agenda for where we want to go next year, from a community perspective.
Hello, John. Can you hear me now?
Oh, now we hear you, Lucas.
Yeah, sorry, I had a issue with Zoom because when I opened it, it started to update. So
Ah,
terribly late because of that as well. And then the audio went somewhere else. I don't understand what happened here, but anyway, I had to
no
join the
worries.
group. But I was listening to what you're talking about. What's the way that the Edge community is going forward, and I'm quite interested also to hear the opinion of others about it.
Yeah, and like there's other groups too, right? There's this picnic group. They're doing things with kind of and they were the ones, if you remember, they did the Atka work that Telco got really excited about several years ago. Um, and is there things that maybe we can do from an OCP picnic liaison work with things that are on Edge, for example. I was looking through kind of the picnic group, and I've kind of had some discussions with them, and they're also looking at kind of this edge space, but more from a operational operational technology perspective. And these are kind of things like things that you'd find in manufacturing verticals and power, electric and power verticals, things like that. Um, that also share a lot of kind of the same things that we would be doing is just kind of in a pure telco vertical under the telco group. Now, is there some stuff that we could work with PicBig, and you were talking about tip, for example. Is there things that people are interested in those areas that they would also like to have something kind of driven from a more open source OCP perspective, right? I think that was kind of your comment about carving off what would you do under OCP versus what you do with tip. What would you do kind of under PicMig that you could also then what would you do under OCP, etc. Because then that kind of gives this convergence story of what kind of the OCP is kind of getting to, where we want to kind of come with a common hardware set that's easier for manufacturers to build towards, that is accommodating a lot of people's needs, kind of to simplify everything and kind of just come up with some better best practices in the way that things are designed and built and whatnot. But that's kind of the discussion that's going on kind of in the background of the OCP team here for both telco and edge. And so kind of throwing that out to our community here, just to kind of see if there's any kind of thoughts in terms of where we want to go, where we want to take things going into the new year. I don't know, Lucas, do you have any thoughts around that?
Yeah, what I think is that the way you're proposing seems to be reasonable way of working going forward. I don't know how well we could contribute. I think maybe trying to prepare some common documentation could be interesting, some way of working where we had more collaboration together to this document that you proposed, like this. Uh, I don't know, or this uh, way, so that we have like a multi-partner document contribution, I think would be a way forward maybe for that.
Yeah.
Maybe John, like writing the common participants from this call into writing this document, and then John, you could try to coordinate this. I think would be a way forward for that, so that it could, I don't know, really have something that was meaningful for everybody involved in this Edge community here.
Yeah. I mean, what are your thoughts, Lucas? And you kind of looked at that liquid cooling. You know, do you see other people working in that area? Is that an area that we could drive here from the edge side? I know they're looking at this from this bigger data center perspective, but I think trying to deploy these things in cabinets in rural areas and whatnot adds perhaps an interesting wrinkle, right? Especially when we looked at with the open edge, the way it's designed, where you can reverse the fans and some of the other things because of kind of the cooling issues that you have in these constrained environments. That's different from like what you'd see in a normal data center. Do you since you kind of had looked at that before, do you think that's something that we can continue to drive? Is that something that do you see other people driving that in kind of this environment?
Yeah, maybe some space for that, but I see more about this liquid cooling, for example, OCP. There is this other side that's related to cooling. There is the cooling environments group, and there is also liquid cooling specification. There is cold plates related. So these other they are quite active, and we see those especially in setting up common specifications for. Of course, as you said, it's more focused on the data center environment. Edge environment, maybe cooling, it's quite difficult challenge to have it like a proper. For example, we are here in Finland now, and cooling is not a big issue for the edge to be looking into problems of start for the system. So this is more a thing that here, and this is of course different in everywhere. So it would be maybe what I was thinking more is about what is liquid cooling space, where there is an effort to write like a common specification document or a common requirement document that could then be used by the members in the group to drive some kind of development there. So maybe for the edge environment, as you were saying, for example, we have the open edge before. Could, for example, have something that was maybe a common hardware development that would be shared between the members that would contribute to this document. We had some telco requirement document being worked in the past. Um, Craig had shared some thoughts and some details that were being done about this document. I'm not sure if it was eventually, but that was more my idea to have this. And we could, for example, as part of this longer document that would be involved in, for example, mechanical side as well, and uh, uh, requirements, we could add something about the cooling there. How do you see it?
Yeah, I mean, if people are wanting to start to add AI into these things, right? We've had this discussion a lot. Is um, that's going to put a whole new level of strain on these constrained environments, and the power I think is going to be an issue, and the cooling. Um, that I don't think people are really thinking about yet, especially in these kind of constrained, deploying this in a container in some remote area, and then even going back to what we talked about earlier about management. That this adds like a whole new wrinkle to the management aspect of things. When you have people are talking about hosting other workloads on this, other than you'd kind of maybe deploy this for a telco use case initially, but you'd want to leverage these resources for other things as well. So that now you need to talk about multi-tenant management. If I'm some third-party enterprise and I'm sharing resources with a telco, I also need some kind of view into the management of this, just like the telco would manage it, because I need to understand its management in the context of all the other things I'm managing. So if I'm kind of deploying this in a neutral host environment, or just doing it with some kind of shared resource with a telco, that's a whole different kind of management concept than what I think anybody's even thinking about today. Um, it's not maybe even pure cloud management either, because there is this telco aspect to it, or there's some kind of shared aspect to it. I don't know. That's just kind of my thought. But yeah, I mean, I thought, I don't think this cooling thing is really figured out yet, especially in you know in but if you start looking at, like, if I want to deploy AI in
But
an industrial environment or something like that, and then you got dust and dirt and all these other things that you also have to worry about. So somebody's gonna say something.
it is John. So there's this open system for AI initiative, right, which has a IT infrastructure domain, a physical infrastructure domain, and system management. And I'm driving the system management part of it. But in the physical infrastructure domain, if you believe that a hardened environment for AI is of importance, then you should go talk to the person who's writing that section and say, is should we add a row entry of AI deployments in hardened infrastructure?
Yep.
Because that list that list is being reviewed by all the members of the initiative, and they may decide it's important. Glad you brought it up, or they may say, it's a low priority. But at least you get visibility from the rest of the industry
Yep. That's a good
and
point.
community to say this is important. If they do to say this is important, the um, Open System for AI initiative is supposed to say, okay, this is of high importance. Who in this room is going to apply resources to help us go resolve this, right?
Yep.
And once people raise their hand, if they raise their hands, they say, well, go talk to John over there because he's got a work group up and running, which is ready to go tackle that.
Yep.
Okay, so that's the first thing I would do is go. So and I forget who's dealing with physical infrastructure, but you should get yourself added to that spreadsheet as a possible idea, because the spreadsheet and the white paper that goes along with it is what is identifying things are in flight and we're covering, and gaps between what we have now and this open for system for AI initiative that um, um, the committee is going to evaluate as to what they believe, which gaps they want to go help plug.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a good idea. I'll look into that. So are there any other things you guys want to talk about? If not, maybe we can just kind of cut it short this month and everybody kind of get ready for the holidays. Seems like a lot of people are
Okay,
out.
sounds good.
All right, gentlemen. Well, thank you much, and we'll talk next year. And everybody have a good holiday, and we'll talk to you later.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right.
Thank you.
Talk to you later.
Thank you, John. Have
Bye.
a nice holiday.
Bye.
You too. Bye.